My name is Ethan and I'm 17 years old. I live in a quiet town near Salem, Massachusetts, a place where old legends still whisper among the streets. My grandmother Margaret always warned me never to cut through Greenwood Cemetery at night. She told me that something dark lurked among the ancient trees and weathered tombstones, waiting for those who disrespected the old ways and the souls at rest. One fateful evening, driven by curiosity and a spark of rebellion, I decided to ignore her warnings. That single choice opened a door to a night I can never forget. I had always felt a strange pull toward the cemetery, even as a child. One cool, autumn night, with the moon casting long shadows on the cracked pavement, I found myself standing at the wrought iron gate of Greenwood Cemetery. My heart pounded in my chest as I remembered all of Grandma Margaret's stories, tales of lost souls and mysterious whispers that echoed among the gravestones. I hesitated at the entrance, but a mix of fear and daring urged me forward into that forbidden place. The cool night air carried a scent of old earth and decay, and each step I took made the darkness feel even more alive. The cemetery was silent except for the occasional rustle of dead leaves skittering across the paths. As I walked, the tall gnarled trees swayed gently in the breeze, their branches twisting like skeletal hands. I could feel an unseen presence watching me from behind a crumbling tomb. My every instinct screamed to turn back, yet I pressed on, driven by a need to uncover what lay hidden among those forgotten stones. I recalled Grandma's words, "Respect the dead, or they will never let you go." I wished I had listened. Soon, the atmosphere grew heavier, as if the night itself was closing. Then, I paused at a corner of the graveyard where the tombstones formed a semicircle around a centuries-old monument. The silence was so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat. In that stillness, my mind began to play tricks on me. Shadows moved. In the corners of my vision, and the air seemed to whisper secrets I couldn't quite understand. Every sound and movement heightened my fear, and I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake. As I ventured deeper into the cemetery, the path became less defined and more treacherous. The narrow lane twisted between leaning headstones and overgrown shrubs. I remember feeling a chill that wasn't caused by the night air. It was as if an invisible hand had brushed past me. My footsteps slowed as I recalled the old warnings passed down by generations. With every step, the ground beneath me felt colder, and the rustling leaves seemed to murmur a warning in a language I could not decipher. I found myself near a small clearing where an old, cracked bench stood under a sprawling oak tree. I sat down for a moment, trying to steady my racing heart, and listened intently to the eerie quiet. That silence was broken only by a faint, almost imperceptible sound, like soft murmurs carried by the wind. I leaned forward trying to make sense of the noise when suddenly a shiver ran down my spine. It was then I realized that I might not be alone. The thought made my skin crawl and my eyes dart around nervously, feeling both terrified and strangely drawn to the mystery. I rose from the bench and continued my journey. Every step echoed through the night, and I began to sense that something was following me, hidden just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I could almost feel its cold breath on the back of my neck. My mind raced as I tried to convince myself it was only my imagination. But deep down, I knew that I had disturbed something that night, something that was waiting patiently in the dark. As I pressed on, the graveyard's shadows grew longer and more sinister. I passed by clusters of tombstones with dates from long ago and felt as though I was walking through a portal to another time. My heart pounded as I recalled the legends of witches and restless spirits in Salem. In the distance, behind a tall marble monument, I saw a flicker of movement, a dark shape darting behind a tree. It was too quick to be an animal, and my pulse sped up as I realized that something unnatural was at play. I quickened my pace, hoping to escape the unsettling feeling that clung to every corner of the cemetery. The path narrowed as the trees closed in, their branches forming eerie silhouettes against the night sky. I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven, as I navigated the winding trail. Then, just as I thought I was safe, I heard a soft voice, barely a whisper, calling my name. It was a sound so chilling and clear that it froze me in place. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, leaving me trembling with dread. With every instinct urging me to run, I remained rooted to the spot, trying to pinpoint where the voice had come from. The murmurs grew slightly louder, and I caught a glimpse of a figure in the distance, a woman with dark, piercing eyes and a presence that exuded menace. I couldn't tell if she was real or merely a trick of the moonlight. The air around me grew thick, and an overwhelming sense of foreboding took hold. In that moment, I knew I was no longer alone in the cemetery, and that something wicked had taken notice of me. The figure became clearer as I stepped closer, and my fear transformed into paralyzing terror. There, emerging from the gloom, was a woman with eyes as dark as midnight. Her face was pale, almost ghostly, and her long hair hung loosely around her shoulders. I recalled Grandma Margaret's warnings, stories of a witch who roamed the cemetery, seeking those who dared break the rules. Now, facing her in person, I felt the full weight of my mistake. Her presence was both mesmerizing and horrifying, and every instinct screamed for me to flee. She moved slowly, with a deliberate grace that made every step seem like an eerie dance. The night seemed to hold its breath as she advanced, her eyes fixed on me. I could see the sorrow and malice in her gaze, a mix that made my blood run cold. She whispered words I couldn't understand, yet each syllable resonated with ancient power. It was as if the very ground beneath us trembled with the force of her curse. I wanted to call out, to beg for mercy, but my throat felt dry, and my voice had abandoned me. In that dreadful moment, time seemed to slow. I watched in disbelief as the witch extended a thin, bony hand toward me. The chill in the air deepened, and the trees around us appeared to lean in, as if to listen to her incantations. I felt as though I was caught in a nightmare, unable to escape the grip of a fate sealed long ago. The cemetery, with all its silent witnesses, became a stage for a dark ritual that I had unwittingly become a part of, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Panicking, I turned to run, my legs carrying me as fast as they could through the maze of gravestones and ancient trees. The witch's eyes followed me, burning with a fierce determination that sent shivers down my spine. Every sound in the night, from the crunch of leaves underfoot to the distant hoot of an owl, seemed magnified, echoing in the silence of the graveyard. I could still hear her low, haunting whispers as they trailed behind me, a constant reminder that I was not free from her curse. I ran blindly, not daring to look back, my mind filled with regret and fear. The path twisted and turned, and I soon found myself disoriented in the labyrinth of tombstones. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as I struggled to keep my balance on the uneven ground. Every step felt like a battle against an unseen force, determined to keep me trapped in that haunted place. I recalled the warmth and safety of home and the wise words of Grandma Margaret, now echoing as bitter regrets in my ears. The feeling of being hunted was overwhelming, as if the witch had claimed me and was determined to drag me back to the darkness from which she came. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I reached a small gap between two ancient mausoleums where the first light of dawn began to show. I dared to glance back over my shoulder, and for a split second I saw her, standing silently in the shadows, her eyes still fixed on me with that unyielding, ghostly stare. The sight burned into my memory, a final curse to remind me of the night I disobeyed. Though I escaped that cursed place, I knew deep within my soul that the witch's presence would forever haunt me, lurking in every dark corner of my mind. In the days that followed, I found it nearly impossible to forget that night. Even in the bright light of day, I felt a lingering chill and a sense of being watched. I began to notice small, inexplicable occurrences, a shadow at the edge of my vision, a whisper in an empty room that convinced me the witch's curse had followed me home. I tried to convince myself it was all just a bad dream, but every time the wind rustled the leaves or the night grew too quiet, I was transported back to Greenwood Cemetery and that dreadful encounter. I reached out to friends and even a local historian in Salem, hoping to find answers about the legends that had tormented me. They spoke of old rituals and warnings passed down through generations, of a witch who had once roamed the cemetery, exacting vengeance on those who dared disturb the dead. Their words offered little comfort, only deepening my understanding that I had become entangled in something much older and darker than I could ever have imagined. The town's history, steeped in mystery and sorrow, now had a personal meaning for me, a living nightmare that refused to fade with time. Now, every night, as darkness falls, I feel her presence drawing near. I can't shake the feeling that she is watching, waiting for the moment to reclaim what I dared to steal, a fleeting glimpse into a forbidden world. I live with the constant fear that one day she will return, and that I will finally be forced to face the consequences of breaking an age-old curse. That night, when I crossed the cemetery's threshold, changed my life forever, and I know that the terror of that encounter will always be a part of who I am. My name is Connor, and I'm a college student who recently moved with my mom, Rebecca, into an old countryside house in rural Connecticut. From the moment we stepped inside, I felt a strange chill and a sense that history whispered through every creaking board. One fateful evening, while exploring the living room, my mom uncovered a mysterious book hidden behind the fireplace, along with a rag doll that looked oddly out of place. That night, as the candles died out on their own and eerie whispers filled the halls, I knew our new home was not as empty as it seemed. When we first moved into the house, I was both excited and uneasy. The building, once owned by a long-forgotten family, stood isolated among towering oaks and a wild garden. I remember the day clearly. The faded wallpaper, creaking floors, and dusty corridors hinted at decades of untold secrets. My mom, Rebecca, was busy settling in when she discovered an old book tucked away behind the fireplace. Alongside it lay a rag doll with eyes that seemed too alive despite its well-worn appearance. I couldn't help but feel that the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to stir. Later that afternoon, I wandered through the house, noticing details that made me shiver. A portrait with eyes that followed me, a room that smelled of burnt wax, and shadows that moved in the corner of my vision. The more I explored, the heavier the air felt. I recalled the local legends of New England witchcraft whispered by older neighbors, and wondered if the house's past was more sinister than I'd imagined. Every creak and distant echo contributed to a growing dread that I couldn't shake off. It was as if the house itself was warning me of a danger lurking in its dark corners. By dusk, a sense of foreboding took hold. Mom had started reading aloud from the strange book, her voice soft yet curious, not realizing that she was awakening long-forgotten words. The sound of her voice reverberated through the halls, mixing with the rustle of leaves outside and the soft thud of the old house settling. I sat quietly in the shadowed hallway, trying to piece together the eerie coincidences. That evening, every sound seemed amplified, every whisper laden with secrets, and I felt the first prickles of terror, an intuition that we were about to witness something truly inexplicable. The night deepened and the house grew even more mysterious. I couldn't sleep, my thoughts racing about the strange discovery and my mom's soft, almost hypnotic reading. As the clock ticked past midnight, I heard the first of many unexplained sounds. A gentle thump, like a book falling off a shelf, echoing through the silent halls. I crept out of my room, each step measured, and found the candlelight in the living room flickering wildly. The atmosphere was thick with an otherworldly presence that I couldn't quite grasp. I moved closer to the living room, trying to see what had disturbed the stillness. There, in the center of the room, the once steady flame of the candles danced, erratically, as if in fear. The air grew colder with each step I took, and faint whispers began to weave through the corridors. The voices weren't clear, but I could almost hear them form my name in a murmur that was both inviting and menacing. I recalled local stories of cursed objects and ancient spells in old Connecticut folklore, wondering if our new home was a portal to those dark legends. Terror mixed with curiosity as I decided to explore further. The floorboards groaned under my weight while I made my way to the narrow staircase leading to the upper floor. Every shadow seemed to hide a secret, every creak a warning. I kept thinking about the book and the rag doll and how they might be connected to the disembodied voices. My heart pounded as I reached the top, where the corridors stretched out in eerie silence. It was then that I realized we were no longer alone, and the ominous whisper that repeated my name chilled me to the bone. The following morning, an uneasy, Calm settled over the house, though I couldn't shake the memory of that night's whispers. I found Mom hunched over the book in the dim light of the kitchen, her eyes glazed with a mixture of fear and fascination. She explained that the passage she read was a fragment of an old incantation meant to bind or perhaps awaken a spirit long confined within the doll. Although she tried to dismiss it as mere folklore, her trembling hands and the haunted look in her eyes betrayed a deep-seated worry. The house seemed to exhale a long-held secret, as if eager to share its sinister history. I spent the rest of the day roaming the rooms, searching for any sign of movement or change. In one corner of the parlor, a cracked mirror reflected not just my face, but something else, a shadow passing behind me. Every creak of the floor and whisper of the wind through broken windows intensified my growing dread. I began piecing together a story from local legends about a vengeful witch whose soul was imprisoned within a cursed doll, destined to rise when her binding words were spoken aloud. The more I learned, the more I felt trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. That evening, as twilight merged into darkness, I gathered the courage to confront the unknown. I retraced my steps to the living room where the candles now lay cold and the air hummed with silent menace. I could almost feel the presence of the witch, a lingering, oppressive force waiting to assert its claim. The atmosphere was charged with an energy that made my skin crawl, and I realized that the boundaries between myth and reality were dissolving. The cursed relic, the book, and the doll were not mere remnants of a forgotten past, but active conduits of a sinister power. Night fell again, and with it, the true horror of our home began to unfold. I awoke to find the house shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from sporadic, flickering candles that had mysteriously relit themselves. I could hear the soft rustle of fabric and the distant clink of porcelain, as if something was moving slowly through the halls. My heart raced as I realized that the doll had vanished from its usual place, leaving behind an unsettling emptiness. Every instinct in me urged to flee, but I felt rooted in place, compelled to uncover the source of these strange occurrences. Stepping cautiously into the hallway, I was met with a series of chilling sounds, a whisper here, a creak there. The silence of the house had transformed into a symphony of eerie noises. I remembered the old Connecticut legends of haunted homes and restless spirits, and a sinking feeling took hold of me. There was something malevolent at work, something that had been stirred by my mom's reading. As I edged closer to the grand staircase, the temperature plummeted, and a sudden gust of wind swept past me, carrying with it a faint, ghastly laugh. It was a sound that resonated deep within, as if mocking my very presence. I finally reached the parlor, where the air was thick with dread and the candle flames danced wildly. In the far corner, the rag doll stood propped against a dusty bookshelf, its eyes reflecting a sinister glint under the sporadic light. I hesitated, knowing that this doll was no ordinary toy, but a vessel of a dark, ancient spirit. My mind raced with the possibility that my mom's innocent act of reading had unleashed a curse upon our new home. In that frozen moment, the doll's head turned ever so slightly, and I could swear it whispered my name in a voice that was both alluring and terrible. Fear gripped me as I tried to make sense of the escalating events. I bolted up the stairs, desperate to find my mom and to escape the oppressive aura that had taken over the house. Every step was accompanied by a chorus of haunting sounds, a blend of soft sobbing, whispered threats, and the unmistakable clatter of something small skittering along the floor. In a state of panic, I dashed from room to room, calling out for Rebecca, my voice trembling in the cold silence. The once familiar corridors now felt like a maze designed to trap me, each turn revealing new shadows and unknown terrors. I finally found my mom in the upstairs study, her face pale and eyes wide with fear as she stared at the open book on the desk. She confessed that she couldn't recall stopping the reading, as if an unseen force had taken control of her. The book's pages were filled with archaic symbols and incantations, and among them, one passage glowed faintly as if lit from within. As we huddled together, trying to make sense of the unexplainable phenomena, the sound of low, mocking laughter echoed from the walls. It felt as though the house itself were laughing at our futile attempts to understand the curse we had awakened. In that moment of utter despair, I knew we had crossed a line. The air turned thick with the scent of burning wax and ancient dust, and I could feel a presence creeping closer behind us. It was as if the spirit of the witch, long imprisoned in that cursed doll, had been set free by our meddling. The atmosphere was electric with terror, every shadow now a harbinger of doom. I clutched my mom's hand, my mind screaming to escape, yet my body remained paralyzed by fear. We were caught in a web of our own making, and there was no turning back from the darkness that now claimed our home. In the days that followed, the house felt like a living nightmare. I rarely left my room, and every corner of the house whispered secrets of the malevolent force now dwelling within. The once warm and inviting rooms had transformed into labyrinths of shadow and dread. I could hear the soft echo of footsteps when no one was there and see fleeting shapes in the reflection of darkened windows. Mom tried to restore a sense of normalcy, but the eerie disturbances only grew worse. It was clear that the spirit of the witch was not content to be confined to myth. She had been awakened and was now roaming free. I began researching the house's history, uncovering tales of a cruel witch who had once terrorized the local area in Connecticut. Old records hinted that she was imprisoned in a doll by a desperate family, only to be sealed away with a cursed book. It seemed that, in our desperate attempt to start a new life, we had inadvertently reopened a door best left closed. Each night the doll's presence grew stronger, and soft whispers that seemed to call my name filled the dark. I realized that our new home was a battleground for ancient magic, and that the witch's curse would forever haunt us as long as we remained under her spell. Now, every creak in the floor, every gust of wind through a broken window reminds me of that fateful night. I lie awake in darkness, listening to the relentless whispers and wondering when the witch will come for me. The once safe haven of our new house has become a prison of fear and unending suspense. I feel as if I'm being watched by eyes that have seen centuries pass, and I know that no matter how hard I try to escape, the darkness holds me captive. That dreadful evening changed everything, and now I'm left with the terror of knowing that the witch's curse is a part of my life forever. My name is Alex, a 22-year-old college student who grew up in a small town in Maine, where old legends were whispered from one generation to the next. Our family never spoke about my missing Aunt Marla, rumored to have done something unforgivable. One rainy afternoon, while rummaging through the attic in our old family home, I discovered a worn wooden box with her name carved on it. Inside lay an emerald necklace, carefully wrapped in a red cloth adorned with strange symbols. Little did I know, this discovery would change my life forever. I always knew there was something odd about our family history, but nothing prepared me for what I would find that day. While cleaning out the attic of our creaky farmhouse in Maine, I stumbled upon an ancient wooden box hidden behind dusty trunks. The box bore the carved name Marla, a name that no one ever mentioned without a hush. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it to reveal an emerald necklace wrapped in a deep red cloth, etched with peculiar symbols. The mysterious aura that filled the air made my heart race, as if the object was guarding a dark secret from the past. Later that day, I asked my mother about the box and the necklace, but she only exchanged a worried glance with my father. Their eyes spoke of unspoken stories and old regrets. I recalled childhood whispers about Aunt Marla, a woman they claimed had been a witch who brought a terrible curse upon our family. Every corner of the old house seemed to murmur secrets, and as I held the necklace in my hand, I felt a chill spread through my body. That evening, the wind outside howled as if mourning lost souls, and I knew that something wicked was stirring. That night, unable to resist the lure of mystery, I fastened the necklace around my neck. I stood before the mirror in my dim bedroom, admiring its intricate design under the weak glow of a bedside lamp. But as I gazed into the glass, my reflection began to change before my eyes. A slight twist in my features and an unfamiliar glimmer in my eyes. I blinked hard, certain that my mind was playing tricks on me. Deep in my heart, I sensed that by wearing that necklace, I had unknowingly invited a dark and powerful presence into my life. The following morning, I awoke with an uneasy feeling that I could not shake off. As sunlight crept through the window, I noticed something was amiss in the mirror. Where I once saw my familiar face, there now appeared hints of a deformed, otherworldly visage that bore a strange smile. The sight left me trembling and confused. I ran to the bathroom to check again, but the reflection seemed to shift ever so slightly, the features growing more like the ghastly image I had seen. The curse had begun its work, and I felt its icy grip tightening around me. I tried to ignore the changes, convincing myself it was just my imagination or a trick of the light. However, throughout the day, unsettling whispers invaded my thoughts. I could hear a soft, almost musical voice repeating my name in a tone that was both seductive and sinister. In class and even during late-night study sessions at home, the voice echoed in my mind, pulling me deeper into an unknown dread. My friends noticed I had become withdrawn and jumpy, yet I dared not mention what I was experiencing. The fear was too raw, and the secret too heavy to share. As the sun set that evening, the atmosphere at home grew even more oppressive. Shadows lengthened in the corridors, and the air felt dense with ancient malice. I returned to the mirror, compelled to understand the horrifying changes. The once familiar face now wore subtle marks of decay and sorrow, as if a long-dead spirit was claiming my features. I felt both terror and a strange, irresistible pull, like I was slowly being merged with the very essence of Aunt Marla. That night, as I lay awake listening to the persistent, eerie whisper in my head, I realized the curse was only just beginning. Days turned into a blur of unsettling events as the curse tightened its hold. I began noticing little changes that escalated with each passing hour, a sudden coldness that clung to my skin, a faint smell of decay in familiar rooms, and the ever-present sound of whispered secrets only I could hear. My reflection in every mirror revealed hints of the deformed woman, and with each glance, her sinister smile grew more pronounced. The transformation was gradual yet relentless, and I felt like I was losing a piece of myself with every passing moment. It was as if Aunt Marla's curse was slowly rewriting my destiny. Desperate for answers, I turned to local records and old family letters tucked away in the farmhouse. I learned that Aunt Marla had been shunned and feared for practicing forbidden arts, and that the necklace was said to be the key to her dark power. The more I discovered, the heavier the weight on my heart became. It was clear that the necklace was not a mere trinket. It was a vessel of an ancient curse meant to transfer her malice and twisted beauty to whoever dared wear it. The realization filled me with a deep, abiding dread that I was now part of a legacy of horror. That night I confronted my parents about the secrets they had hidden for so long. Their tearful confessions revealed a family history steeped in fear, shame, and the bitter consequences of meddling with forces beyond understanding. They warned me that the curse would only worsen if left unchecked, that my fate was now intertwined with an evil that had haunted our lineage for generations. As I listened, I could almost see the ghostly face of Aunt Marla lurking in the corners of our dimly lit living room, her deformed smile a permanent reminder of the price of curiosity. In that moment, I understood that escape was no longer an option. The final days before the curse reached its full fury were a torment of both body and soul. Every morning I awoke with more of Aunt Marla's hideous features etched into my reflection. My eyes, once warm and familiar, now glinted with a cold, alien gleam. I struggled to maintain control as the voice in my head grew louder and more insistent, dictating thoughts I no longer recognized as my own. Friends began to notice the stark change in my demeanor and the way I shied away from mirrors. I felt trapped in a living nightmare where every passing moment blurred the line between reality and a twisted legacy. In a final bid to break the curse, I sought help from a local historian and a trusted priest in our small Maine community. They spoke in hushed tones about ancient rituals, forbidden pacts, and the deep scars left by those who tampered with dark magic. With their guidance, I prepared a desperate ritual to sever the bond between my soul and the cursed necklace. That night, under a crescent moon, I gathered the items prescribed by the old texts in our creaking farmhouse. The air was thick with anticipation as I began the incantation, each word laced with hope and terror in equal measure. But as the ritual progressed, it became clear that some forces are beyond human control. The mirror in my room shattered as I screamed, and a piercing, otherworldly laugh echoed in every corner of the house. In that chaotic moment, I realized that the curse was not something I could simply undo. It had become a part of me, a legacy that would live on no matter how much I fought it. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was my own reflection morphing completely into the deformed, smiling visage of Aunt Marla. Now, I am left with the eternal whisper of her voice in my mind, a constant reminder that some family curses are unbreakable. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay informed when the next video comes out. And tell me, what did you think of today's stories? See you in the next video.